The year is 1932. The air in Haiti clings like a second skin. Lanterns swing, drums beat in the hills, and a wedding is about to begin. But before the champagne is poured, death will walk among the guests. This Halloween, I'll show you how to run my own horror one-shot, Bride of Death, the Voodoo Horror, and how you might keep your players on edge from the first toast to the final scream. Coming right up on RPG Retro Reviews. Hello everyone, I'm Captain Courageous, and normally I review old school modules and games and try to give them a fun and informative analysis, but this week I'm doing something a little bit different and maybe a little special. I'm walking you through my very own Halloween one-shot that I'm running for my gaming group this year. It's called The Bride of Death, the Voodoo Horror, taking inspiration from the 1933 horror classic White Zombie starring Bela Lugosi. The movie itself is an artifact of its time. Released only 4 years after the introduction of talkies, it still exudes the atmosphere of the silent film era in many respects and has some very stunning visuals with atmospheric matte paintings and reusing some of the sets on the Universal Studio lot, including those from 1931's Dracula, also starring Bela Lugosi. Lugosi gives quite the creepy and weird performance as the zombie master, Murder Legendaire. Rock legend Rob Zombie actually named his band after this film. This is the first feature-length zombie movie and would influence many films that came after. Interestingly, the film was thought lost for many years and fell into the public domain, but was rediscovered in the 1960s. Over the decades, it has been gradually restored, and you can even find a mildly colorized version on Amazon Prime, though its black and white version is also available on Tubi, and a very nice high-quality version is on YouTube. So if you want to seek out this horror classic, it shouldn't be too hard to do. I'll leave a link for the YouTube movie in the description. Of course, what would be running a Halloween one-shot RPG without dice? As gamers, we all love dice. Certainly there's a dice goblin at your table with a vast collection of unique and amazing dice sets. It's the randomness of dice that partly determines the fate of your adventures, and that gives them a kind of magical power. Let me introduce you to Dice Nest. Dice Nest is a unique crafter of high-quality polyhedral dice who don't simply make dice for your fantastical games, but nurtures those stories and your imagination through the beauty of their creations. There is the Crimson Bloom set with a real preserved flower within each die, frozen in time like a moment of passion made eternal. The Arcane Gateway dice series are engraved with mystic runes and crafted from genuine precious stones like Sioux Jade. These dice seem to carry the power of ancient spells, ready to transport you into a world of fantasy and mystery. Or my personal favorite, the Prismatic Radiance dice cut from K9 prismatic glass in a unique, multifaceted method. The light dazzles and refracts hypnotically in a spectrum of color. The pictures here just don't do these justice. Dice Nest was kind enough to actually send these to me, and when I showed them to my players, they were just blown away. There is a vast array of dice sets at Dice Nest's website that is sure to appeal to your inner dice goblin. And thanks to this collaboration with Dice Nest, you can save 15% off your purchase when you enter Captain Courageous at checkout. Add to the magic of the gaming experience at your table with Dice Nest today, and game on. Thank you, Dice Nest. To me, what makes the movie compelling is the villain in this tale, Murder Legendaire, who, for my own one-shot, I've renamed Balthus, finding Murder as a first name to be a little bit over the top. Legendaire's power is so horrifying because you don't actually die at his hand, The vile voodoo master saps your will and turns you into a living corpse of sorts trapped in your own body. So for my Halloween horror one-shot, that's what I really tried to emphasize. The core plot of the movie remains as a skeleton, but I've greatly expanded it to include quite a few original locations and NPCs. The fictional village of Saint Dominique, for example, is entirely my own creation. Here I've tried very hard to adhere to the culture and language of Haitian Creole and lean into the island's history and superstitions where possible. For example, rather than referring to Legendaire as a voodoo master, he is referred to as a Bokor. Also, I've tried to give many of the various locations and NPCs proper Creole-based names than one might have encountered in this time period. And in fact, I provide a list of such NPC names so that a GM can use them for the villagers that might be encountered or any NPCs they might want to add. So if this sounds interesting to you and you'd like to actually run this adventure yourself, well, the fully developed 32-page scenario is already available on my Patreon, free to all paid tiers, complete with the adventure text and handouts from anthropologist Dr. Corvington's journal, or you can also grab it as a standalone download for just $5 if you don't want to subscribe. A link for all of that is in the description. The stats for the NPCs in this adventure use the format from Dan Master's Eldritch Hack RPG. I used Eldritch Hack because it's a stripped-down, bare-bones horror gaming system where characters are defined by just a handful of stats: skill, hit points, lore, and sanity. Perfect for a tense one-night horror scenario. Though if you like, you could easily use any horror RPG system. Also, a unique aspect of this adventure is that the players' roles here aren't actually adventurers or investigators or even heroes. They're just regular people attending their friend's wedding. They are the bridesmaids and groomsmen, or even clergy. Their bonds are to the bride and groom, Neil Parker and Madeline Short, which makes the eventual horror to come more personal. Just as in the movie, the setting is in Haiti, 1932, in the fictional coastal village of Saint Dominique. Whitewashed houses, cobblestone streets, a chapel in the hall, and painted skiffs rocking in the bay. By day it feels alive, merchants selling fruit and rum, children laughing. But by night the square empties, and only the sound of distant drums carries in the hills. Into this world arrive the player characters. The marriage hosted by a wealthy plantation owner named Charles Beaumont at his estate, Chateau de Sandra. Beaumont has extended this generous invitation, promising Neil a bright future in his New York financier firm. But Beaumont's motives are not love or friendship. They are obsession, jealousy, and a bargain struck with the evil Bokor, Balthus Legendaire. Whenever you run a horror one-shot like this for your players, they already know they're here for a horror one-shot game. That means immersion is paramount. Your lighting needs to be low. Maybe change out some of the lamp bulbs for spooky green-colored ones. These bulbs here are fun. They are multicolored, and you can control them from your phone. You can light some candles and play some creepy background music as well. Let me recommend Graham Plowman's collection of Lovecraftian-inspired background music, which is available on YouTube and iTunes. Plowman's compositions are very moody and exude a cinematic atmosphere, and go a long way to really setting the mood at your table. You also need to stress from the start the role of the players are not actually investigators or adventurers. They are regular people just here for a celebration with their friends. This is a joyous occasion. One factor in your favor is that while the players know that they are here for a horror game, what they don't know is exactly how or when the horror will manifest itself. Subtlety is the key to success here. Recommend to your players that they take appropriate vocations for their characters, such as business people, lawyers, reporters maybe, and also a doctor or nurse might be appropriate. Have the players define their connection to the couple. If you're using Eldritch Hack, you can actually wait until the start of the session to create the characters, as it will literally only take about 5 to 10 minutes to do so. Given the location of this adventure, the players will likely suspect that voodoo is involved somehow. Don't fight that expectation. Lean into it. They don't know exactly how the voodoo magic works in this story. Besides, the horror here isn't about corpses rising from the dead to consume flesh. These aren't those sorts of zombies. These are not the undead. And in fact, the zombies here are really tragic. This is about something even more terrifying. Imagine being alive but not alive, your mind suppressed, your will broken, your body enslaved as a tool of another. The Bokor doesn't kill you. That would be a mercy. Instead, you are his thrall, mindlessly trapped in your own body without even the will to end your own pitiful existence. That is the vile fate that awaits Legendary's enemies and victims. This is the horror players should dread above all else. Also, since this is a one-shot horror scenario, one of the many very real possible endings is that all the player characters end up as zombie thralls under Legendary's control. This adventure offers a wide variety of interesting non-player characters, and bringing them to life will be the key to your success when running this or any horror scenario of this kind. The cast of NPCs include Madeline Short, the bride. She's gentle and intelligent, but has a hidden inner strength. The groom, Neil Parker, is earnest, passionate, and the emotional core of the adventure. His tragic loss drives the narrative. Charles Beaumont is the host. He's wealthy, obsessed. He is the reason the horror creeps into this celebration. It is his willingness to sacrifice others for his own selfish desires that sets everything in motion. Balthus Legendary, the Bokor, urbane, polite, and with eyes that can strip away your will. He's a classic villain. His power is terrifying in its implications. Dr. Aldous Brunner, missionary and scholar, a reluctant expert in the local lore, he can become a valuable ally against Legendary when the time comes. Then there's also a small supporting cast. There's Silver, the butler, Beaumont's lackey, and also a possible ally later on if he isn't killed first, as he generally cares about his employer. Then there's Legendary's cast of zombie thralls themselves. Ladot, the former Bokor that taught Legendary his skills. Von Gelder, the former wealthy zombie. Marquis Renard, the former chief of police, now under Legendary's thrall. And Siobhan, the executioner. Legendary's muscle and the most dangerous zombie of the bunch. And lest we forget the various villagers of St. Dominique. And finally, there is Dr. Elias Corvington, the anthropologist. This character does not appear physically in the adventure, already missing and presumed dead, but it's his journal fragments that can be discovered in various locations throughout the adventure that brings Corvington to the player's attention. They could be in Beaumont's library, Legendary study, found in the village with an NPC, or at the chapel with Dr. Brunner. The journal is a handout you can give the players to gradually feed them bits and pieces about the lore of the Bokor and the village. Speaking of the village, St. Dominique is also a character in this scenario. The key to success is to bring the village to life with a cast of colorful characters. The players are introduced to the Haitian village of St. Dominique during the introduction, and it's here they can find a chapel, Dr. Brunner's sanctuary, lined with missionary journals, a place where faith feels like a shield against the dangers outside. There's the marketplace square, colorful by day, silent by night, where at some point the PCs might encounter children singing an eerie rhyme. In a horror adventure, children singing and rhyming can always be counted on to provide a real creepy moment, and the chant the children sing goes something like this. Stray in the circle the shadow can't see. Step out of the circle, it comes after thee. Run from the shadow, don't let it near. Once it touches you, you vanish, my dear. A crude chalk circle is drawn on the ground. This is a safe zone that a child can run to, but only for 5 seconds. Count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000. The child who is the shadow wears a rough sackcloth mask with clumsy eye holes, sometimes painted in charcoal or chalk to look exaggerated, that prowls around, arms raised, hands in a claw grip. Anyone outside the circle can be tagged. Once tagged, they become the new shadow and don the mask. Children laugh and shriek, but the game has an oddly ritualistic cadence, especially the way they pause inside the circle, watching the shadow prowl. The tavern, Le Perroquet Bleu, or the Blue Parrot, exudes rums, guitars, and gossip. Villagers speak freely here until the sugar mill is mentioned, then hushed silences. Poor Neil Parker might be found here later on in the adventure, drowning his sorrows from the tragic loss of his lovely wife. There's the docks where the fishermen whisper of dead men working the cane, and the sugar mill itself next to Charles Beaumont's plantation, a true place of horror. This might be introduced early before the ceremony when the PCs might notice that their host Beaumont sneaking away after hosting a fine dinner upon their arrival. I'll talk more about this place in just a moment, but it's here where the zombie thralls toil endlessly, dangerously walking among the catwalks, milling sugar cane. This is a land alive with contrasts, joy on the surface, death lingering just beneath. The complication phase takes place during Beaumont's estate, Chateau de Sandra. The wedding begins the following day with joy, but Beaumont tends to hover a bit too close to the bride Madeline, his gaze perhaps creepily lingering. During the celebration at this reception, during a toast, our lovely bride falls cold and lifeless. Here you need to play it straight for the horror. She's dead. Table should surely believe it. During the character creation, try to encourage at least one player to take the role of a doctor or a nurse, so when they check their skill roll, even a natural 20, poor Madeline will appear to have suddenly passed from the stress, giving the doctor no choice but to declare her gone. This should be a gut punch. There is also an NPC ally that is in attendance, the missionary Dr. Aldous Brunar, who can also fill the role of doctor if none others are present, or better yet, play the role of backup confirming Madeline's tragic demise. A weak heart, tragic for one so young and vibrant, and during such a momentous occasion. Poor Neil! Pulling off Neil's devastating loss could be quite the emotional moment. The next day, Madeline's body is entombed in Beaumont's family crypt. A sunset funeral, beautiful and sad. Why is she buried here? Well, it turns out poor Madeline had no living relatives. Raised in an orphanage, her betrothal to Neil is a single moment of beauty in a life seemingly filled with tragedy. Beaumont offers his family crypt to honor her in death, and Neil, broken and in shock, his entire future suddenly snuffed out, is in a daze of grief and despair, and reluctantly agrees. I highly recommend really playing the celebration and the happiness of the moment to its utmost. Put on some period jazz music. Surely Beaumont hired a band. The ballroom, the full setting of it all. At this point, no one knows where the horror is going to come from, so the sudden death of the young bride right there in front of everyone should be a total shock. Describe her death, and then stop and let your players sit stunned for a moment. During the investigation phase of the adventure, which takes place after Madeline's death, several key NPCs will go in different directions. Neil will wander into town to get drunk at the cantina Le Perroquet Bleu. Beaumont disappears as well, where even his butler Silver seems to be unaware of his employer's whereabouts. It's time for the PCs to really start exploring Beaumont's estate, the village, and talking to the villagers and various NPCs. The one major location that really drops the hammer is going to the sugar mill. At some point, the PCs will investigate this place. Perhaps they tracked Beaumont the previous evening, maybe tried to snoop in on the plantation owner's secret meeting with Legendaire. Regardless, this is a place of true horror. They will lose some sanity points here at the horrific sight of those expelled people mindlessly working the mill, pacing robotically in an endless circle, turning the grinder, walking on catwalks above, dropping the sugar cane into the miller. At one point, a worker falls into the mill itself and gets ground up along with the sugar cane, with appropriately gorish results. Horrifically, the workers never even notice or pause. The work continues. The reason Beaumont meets Legendaire the night before it was to obtain the very zombie powder he puts on a rose he gives to Madeline before the wedding ceremony. The players might witness this interaction or intervene. Either way, this is their first taste of Legendaire's true power. Confronting the Beaucourt directly is dangerous. He doesn't rage. He doesn't threaten. He simply suggests. His thralls obey because they no longer have the will not to. Legendaire interposes the zombies between himself and the PCs and flees if they try to get physical. Where does he flee to? More on that in a moment. In the climax, that takes place in Legendaire's fortress. At this point, there are a lot of pieces in play. Things are in motion. What the PCs don't know, though, they will discover at some point that their generous host, Charles Beaumont, has gone missing. The reason is that he had second thoughts about his grotesque desires for Madeline. As a zombie thrall, Madeline's will broken, everything he loved about her is gone. Her light has been extinguished, and he's overwhelmed at the wickedness he's wrought. This is when Legendaire's true evil emerges. The vile Beaucourt also has designs on poor Madeline, and those plans don't include the simpering Beaumont. So he'll slip the zombie powder in a glass of wine, and Beaumont himself becomes another of Legendaire's thralls. At some point, the PCs will learn of Legendaire's stronghold, La Retreat des Âmes, which translated means the retreat of souls, and makes their way to confront the evil Beaucourt directly. Perhaps the groom Neil Parker is with them, or perhaps he's too distraught to come along. This really depends on how the players roleplay their interactions with him. A storm breaks over the cliff, a crack of thunder. Within Legendaire's stronghold, poor Madeline can be discovered, in an elegant gown, perched high on the cliffside balcony, overlooking, staring blankly into the sea. She is alive, but her eyes are empty. This is the setup for the final confrontation with Legendaire. The Beaucourt is a powerful intellect who exudes a calm inevitability. He doesn't want to kill you. He wants to control your mind and enslave your will forever. His gaze mesmerizes, and his voice strips away free will. Entering the stronghold isn't that difficult. Legendaire doesn't expect invaders. His arrogance and overconfidence is a weakness the PCs can exploit. The gate to the place is open, and only 2 zombie thralls guard it. They are mindless, they don't cry out, and if the PCs act quickly, they won't be able to sound an alarm. I really haven't provided a map of the stronghold for this adventure, as it's not really required, but several key locations are described in detail. In addition to the grand entry hall, there's the elegant study. Here a polished mahogany desk centers the room. A map of the island coast is framed on one wall. And of course, shelves of books, philosophy, colonial history, and even darker tomes. I provided a healthy list of 10 books that might be found here, as well as perhaps one of Corvington's journal fragments. You can pause the video here if you want to read over some of the diabolical reading to be found within Legendaire's study. Other locations can be explored. Legendaire's laboratory, where all sorts of grisly discoveries can be made, including a notebook containing the names of many of the people in Saint Dominique. Their reason to fear him is quite well founded. There is the dungeon cells that contain other captive souls, And then the cliffside overlook, a parlor of sorts that overlooks an abyss into seafoam death. A great place for a final confrontation with Legendaire and his remaining zombie thralls. I've also laid out the most likely outcomes. Yes, it's totally possible to have a happy ending here, and then giving Legendaire's power to have a complete disaster. So during the denouement, 4 possible endings are suggested. Triumph, Legendaire's defeated, Madeline restored to her former vibrant self. She and Neil live happily ever after. Bittersweet, Madeline is restored, but Beaumont, Neil, or one of the PCs fall. Then there's the tragic ending with Madeline remains entranced and Legendaire escapes. Or the hopeless ending where all the PCs are killed or fall fully under Legendaire's control. Legendaire remains triumphant. I've tried to provide a core outline with characters and settings, but of course this isn't the only way things could go. If you run this adventure, I would be thrilled with your feedback and hearing what your group did with it. If you want the full scenario, it is on my Patreon, free for all paid tiers, complete with props and handouts, or grab it without a subscription for just $5. A link is in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this fun and interesting. It's something different that I decided to try out. I hope you like it. I'd like to thank all my patrons who continue to support the channel month after month. Thank you so much. Please give this video a like, comment, and share. Please check out my Teespring store for great gaming swag, t-shirts, carry bags, coffee cups, and more. Join the channel's Facebook page, RPG Retro Reviews, and consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron yourself, or alternatively, you can just send a tip through the PayPal tip jar or use Super Thanks. Links are in the description. As always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.